Now welcome back. For this video, we go start to dey use everything wey we don learn take create a random IP address generator for us. Now the project wey we dey try make be this. So wetin be this IP generator? Now say e go dey help us dey generate a random IP address every time we click on this generate button. So anytime we click am, we go dey get new IP address, new IP address, new IP address, new IP address, and you get the point. So make we copy this IP address, make we even see whether na real IP address we dey work with, right? So I could just copy. So I come this site for here. I want test the IP for this site, right? So make I paste am here for this site. It says IP lookup, and you see say this thing they give me this IP address, which now the same IP address we get for here, but they tell me say I dey United States. We could try another IP. So if I generate, we could try this one. I could just copy and then we could come back here and paste them in. I check this IP again, United States, but different IP address. But if you check out the region for here, they different. We don't fit use just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. In case they block Twitter again, we can no worry, make your own VPN. Bye. I would like thank everybody wey don dey follow me, everybody wey don dey subscribe, everybody, you guys are the best. But make una no forget, we get group for una to take join our community for Telegram. We go dey post different things, we go dey give una updates, we go dey even dey share jobs with una. So make una become a part of this community, because as we start to dey build am, now una go dey grow with us as we dey grow also. So make we enter the project again. Now, if you look inside this my VS Code where I dey work with, so you go see say I just get this empty directory or empty folder where be random IP generator. I don't get anything inside this file, it just dey empty. So make we start to create this generator from scratch. The first file we go like make now the index.html file. So make we make am. So we'll say index.html. And the second file we want make now the CSS file. Make we say styles.css. And the third file we want to make now our JavaScript file. So if you just say main.js for this one, if you name anything we want, but just make sure say now HTML, JavaScript, and .css we they use for that. So make I close all these two first. We go work with them soon. Now to make this our HTML, because I use VS Code, I could just say make I use emmet quickly make our boilerplate. So I go press enter for there, and then make we name our project, right? Random IP address generator. This now our random IP address generator. I'm not going to write address all the time just for the title. What we need to do now to link our CSS, remember? So make we link our CSS. So we say we want link our CSS script, which now the link. Now make we just call and say we define our style. So you see say we get styles to CSS, just put the S, that's for there, and that will give us our link to our CSS. So if we say we want to add our JavaScript now, best practice, make we go inside the body, and then make we add our script tag. So I could say script, and I want to add my JavaScript inside the script, right? So I could say main.js. All right, once we save them, we don't link our JavaScript to this HTML project where we work with for here. So what do we need for this our HTML where we work with here? So we'll go back into the browser. So you see say we get this H1, and after we get this H1, you see say we get this button, right? And after the button, we just get the results for here. Now what do we call this one? If we refresh the page, for example, you go see say they help us they generate new IP every time we refresh the page. So that's one too. Now another thing we will go work on. But for now, make we just try work on the UI. Make we make sure say this layout be the same. We can connect them to everything we want. So make we go to HTML, add this text, add this button, and add the random IP. So make we go back into our VS Code. For inside this our VS Code, so for the H1, we could just say I column random IP address. So I could say want the H1, press tab, which will help us format our code. Then we go say we want random IP generator, right? Now this random IP generator, you see we still add some emojis. I don't know if you now see that emoji for there. I get a plugin where I did run for VS Code, and that plugin emoji sense, this one. You will just need this extension if you want to add emojis. Now the one where they use, they add emojis for inside my VS Code. And once you don't install that extension, we press save. So that will give us our heading. The next thing we need now the button, right? So we want the btn, and make this button and make it get an ID. Once you press tab, you go get a button with a class of ID. Another way if you do the same, if you just continue to write the text where we want, or the ID name we want. So the ID name we I define for here now gen btn, then our generator btn. So I will just abbreviate, I will don't make a small, say gen btn, and then make we just press tab. So you see, we don't get ID of gen btn. Then make we add the text, say generates, right? Okay, make a big G for there. And then make we add the result. So for the result, we go use the pre tags. So we go say pre. And what we want to do for this pre tag, now say we want a class of IP result. So I go say P with the class of IP, dash results. Just press tab and you go fit add your IP result. No put any text for inside. The text go be inserted dynamically. No need put any text inside. Okay. So we just press save for there. And we don't finish with our HTML. The next thing we need, now say make we run our live server. So if you right click for here on top the index of HTML, I go see this option say open with live server. Okay, so make we click on, and once we click on, it go help us run our browser into a new tab, and it go help us to work with that tab. Now we want to go back inside our VS Code, make we add our CSS. So for inside our VS Code, what we want to do is say we want to close this one, the HTML, make we enter the CSS. But instead of make we write the whole CSS for here, so and make I dey explain one by one wetin dey happen, make I just copy the code from the other side where I don't already work out. Then we go just paste them. Then I go just explain give una, and I just paste them for inside here. All these styles we don't work with them already before. So if you want to know how we take work with CSS, if you watch the CSS side of our video, so and you go know what we they work with for here. Make we see waiting our CSS they tell us for here. So make I go my browser, and you see say now we get our style exactly like the other one where we don't work with. So make I show you. So this is saying we get them for here, but for here when we click on, you know they work. That because we never put JavaScript, so they help us they generate the random IP address. So make we go back our VS Code, make we start to add our JavaScript, right? So we'll go back our VS Code, and for inside this our VS Code where they work with, so make we close the style for there, and make we enter our main.js, right? So for inside this our main.js, now here we're going to add our JavaScript. I'd like open the browser for one screen and the code editor for the other screen. So now we get VS Code for one side and we get our browser for the other side. So for inside this my JavaScript, so make we connect the element to the DOM, right? So we could just say connect DOM elements. Make a big DOM. So if you don't know what's in DOM be, that's another kind session, another kind topic for JavaScript. But just not say DOM now like the browser, that the DOM, that the way the DOM they behave. So we want to select all the elements where our eyes go to see, right? So then now what we go do first. Make we say we want to connect to the button, right? Remember, say if we look inside our HTML for here, because you see we just get only few elements. So we get the heading, we get the button, we the only interact with the button itself. So as we click the button, we want to make the button they work with this pre tag. So now mainly those two elements we could just use, right? Const btn, make we call them btn for button. For inside this button, we want the document, which are the DOM, right? Remember? But we want to make we say we want get elements by ID. Remember, say if you look this our button, we they use this ID for here. Now we use. So make we go back here and make we copy that text. And then make we just say we want a quote for inside this our get element by ID, and then make we paste that. If it be single quote or double quote, so make we paste that for inside the button. The next one we need now say we want work with the pre, right, or the result. So make we say we want just like before, const. Then we'll say we want the result. Okay, let's see result. I'm going to assign this result to document.query selector. And this query selector, what we want to be say, we want the class. Remember where the class they come from? We collect this class for the pre. So we want this class of IP results. Make I just copy out and say we want paste and there. So we get this class of IP dash results, right? So now when we don't get our elements, so we don't get our button, we don't get our results, make we see what's in again we go like to. We go like make a function. And we want to make this function, make it a create a random IP. So we'll say random IP address. Make we add to do for there. So we'll say to do. Which other thing we go like do? We go need way where we say we go like to do, we go like to display or show the IP as text in a DOM element. Now make we add the first function for you. Make we create the first function. So the first function are just the most, I go say the most complex algorithm we go write for here. But once you write them, it going to help us they generate the random IP anytime. All right. So make we say we want a function, and this function we call this function make random IP. Now, because the function, make we write our parentheses and our curly brace for them. And this function, make I just make a small f. Remember to always write your function with small f, right? Well, we go like create an array. And this array, we want fill the array with things. So we want make the array they generate itself, right? So instead of make we they write the array the way we done the write array since, so we go say array class, we get the array constructor. It they help us, they create an array or they work with arrays. So we want say we want create an array constructor. We get 4 items inside. And that 4 items now each value of our IP. So because we they work with our method for our function for here, so make I just say one console.log make random IP. All right. So now this our make random IP don't they work for us? Nice, nice. But if I open up my dev tool, press F12, you will see say we get this random IP for here. So you remember say because now function, we gonna need to call our function, right? Don't ever forget that. So we go say one call our function. So if I press save, you go see say our function don't they fire for here for line 10 for inside the dev tool. Make them bigger. Our function don't they run for here, but you go see say we get this undefined. That now simply because we know they return any value come. So if I press resave now for this return, you see say we get an array of 4, an array we get length of 4 items, that are the length of the array based on 4, right? But it they empty. So we get an array of 4 empty items. So how we go take fill the array now with something? Well, we could just use the array method we follow JavaScript array come, which now the dot fill. So we go say dot fill method. What you want fill them with? Well, we want fill them with 0. So if I just press save now, you go see we get array of 4 items where all of them they give us 0. If I say I want 10, all of them could get 10 inside. If I press save, you go see we get 10 for all the items for our array. We'll make it 0 for them. So what's again we need? Well, the next thing we're gonna need now the map method. So we say dot map, which now for all arrays for JavaScript, right? Now this map, how will it work? We say it take a function, right? If you just write function like this, but me, I like doing like this. Say I want an arrow function. So I go say parentheses equals to and go, right? That's now my arrow for them. So make we say we want the first item, item, and the second parameter now the index. So I go just say idx. And if I don't assign that index for there, make we say we want the map, that are the default JavaScript math object where they follow JavaScript. Every JavaScript they come, every browser come. We can say we want that math now, but we want the floor. Then we can give them our own arguments now where we want. So which arguments we want? Well, we want to give them another math object, but this math object we want to give us the random method. So JavaScript they always give us random every time. If we say we want that like this now, JavaScript could give us this random number every time. It could tell us say, oh, random number this, random number that. Now so JavaScript could help us they do. So now when we don't they get the random number for inside this our algorithm like this, we want to multiply them by 255. That means say we won't get any random number between 0 and 255. You understand? So as we don't do it like that, make we say we want to even add or check, say the IP, we will say the index where we they count, now the item for the array. If any of the item for that array, if it equals to 0, make we use conditional statements here. So we go say for inside this conditional statement, if it equals to 0, if the index equals to 0, then make we say we want the colon and we want assign out to 0. And now we tell now JavaScript say, okay, now when you don't give us this random number where we get for you, where they look like this for this side, make you do something else for us. If you look this our random number where they get, we see we they get comma, comma, comma. So we need something else, and that now the join method. So we say array dot join. Now, this join, what in join they do? Well, join they help us, they join something. That's all. So if I say I want press save now, you go see say join don't come out, don't change from array to string. And the way join they join them, they join them into one string. So they take all the elements for inside the array, they join them into one string. But join they also help us, they do certain things. So if I say I want to do quotes for here and I press save, you go see say join don't come out all the comma where they there. And then I say, okay, now I want to do dots for here. You go see say join go come add dot for all the elements for all the items for the array. You see the dot. So now, well, as we don't look this code like this, you see say this our random IP algorithm we write for here. You see say now it don't they work for us nice. You know they give us random IP every time we call them. So now when we don't they call them for here, we go need where this we go like to the display them, right? And that now here. So we go need to say, okay, make I change this to do for here since we don't do this one. Make I come out this to do, and then make I come out this to do. All right. So now when we don't get this IP for here now, make we say we want to display the IP. How we do it? We say we want the constant. And this constants, we want make it be like a function, make it a show random IP actually. So we'll say show random IP. Now this show random IP now, this function, we want make it be a fat arrow function. We're going to take in a parameter, right? I'm going to say make this function, they take in an element as its parameter. So we'll say L or elements. So I can say elements. Now, the elements where this show random IP go they take now. Now we want attach things to now. So any element where we call now, we want make the elements, make it tell us in text, and then we want change the text of that element. So we'll say now we want make this function whenever we pass an element into them. So we'll say element. We want make this element to make we get the text content. So we'll say content. And this text content we want assign them to something, whatever the elements be. Now, what do we want to assign them to? Well, we just want to assign them to our make IP or the result where we get for here. We say make random IP. So anytime we call this show random IP, we go need to display them somewhere, right? So what we go want display this random IP? We go like to display them whenever the button they click. So if I come here now, click, we don't even see the result. We don't even see the random IP for here. So how we want to see the random IP for here? Make we say we want to display them for inside an element. So we need a way to tell the element, say, okay, now we want to show the element whenever something click, whenever we click, then make it display. So we go say, make we write the comments, we go say display random IP. So we say on click. Right. What we're going to need to do be say we want whenever they click that button. Remember, say we don't define the button for here. We're going to say, okay, now whenever this button they clicked now, we want to attach an event listener to it. Make it a look out for event listener. Which kind of event listener are we doing for? We're doing for the click event. So we go say click. And because we define that click event now, what do we want to do whenever they don't click something? She want console log something, she want laugh, she want cry. What do we want to do for here? That time we're going to say, okay, now we want to come out for the second parameter of our event listener, right? Then we're going to say, now we want to add the function. So make we call them an anonymous fat arrow function. I want to make this anonymous fat arrow function, make it just help us the show random IP. So if we say we want to show this random IP, make we call them. Remember, say this our show random IP will show for any element we attach them to, because we expect an argument of an element. So which element we get if we help us display that IP address, and then at this results element. As now that, make we say now we want the results element. Semicolon there, press save, make we see if it will work. I press save, generate, we get this bug for here. Okay, so I don't see the error for here. I don't see the cause now because say now simple small error where we get for here, and that now say for this query selector, we suppose they select the element by class. I don't know if any of them don't notice them by that. So we suppose use the CSS selector. I don't use the, because na class, I don't use the dot. So once I add that tiny dot, our life go change. So make we try out. If I press save and then I just click this button, it don't work for us. Nice for here. If I say okay, now wait, it don't work, make I click on, you see say our IP don't work as we expect. So make we just copy this text for now. Okay, copy them, Control C, and then make we paste them for here. So I can say Control B. So once I press enter, you can see say now we dash to come for this my own IP, and now the IP don't change to Luxembourg, because this now this new IP. Remember, say now 8, right? Then now 899.118 and 94. So make we check our one. We get 899.118 and 94. So our IP they work well. If you generate any amount of IP for free, because our JavaScript they help us, they make our IP. So if I refresh the page, you can see say our IP, they work, right? But if I click this generate button, we get our new IP. So every time we click, good. What we go like do now, say we go like refresh the page. So what we do, what we need now, say we need way today display. We go say display random IP on page load instead. So display random IP anytime where the page don't load. So how we want to take do? We want that when the window don't load. So whenever the window object, I go leave notes for now. So already we don't work with the document. So the document object, now we work with the window object. So we go say we want the window, whenever the window object we want set an event listener to them. So we need to say we go come say add event listener, right? Now, which event listener we want? Well, the event listener we want now the DOM content loaded event listener. Meaning say whenever the DOM content don't load, it go give us signal. And once that signal don't happen, we want trigger an event. We want fire our event. So the event we want to fire now our anonymous function And that anonymous function, we want to do the show random IP function where we don't create already. And this show random IP function where we don't make, what we need be say, because we they make them again, just like before for here, we gonna need to pass them the result. That result will pass us that issue with the dot before, we're gonna need to pass them again back into the result so that it could just show every time for us. So make we say parentheses, and after the parentheses or inside the parentheses, we could pass in our result. So now, whenever we reload the page, reload, we they always get new IP address. So make we even still see if our IP still they work. Yeah, still they work, and if we generate new IP, it still they work. So make I just copy this text first, and make we test whether which IP be this just for fun. Remember, say right now we did logs in bulk the last time we check. So make we refresh the IP, and it's supposed to change to another IP for us. And now we the United States of America, New Jersey or New Jersey. So that now how we feel they use JavaScript to they create a random IP address generator. So you feel add more functionalities to this our little application when we work with. So you feel add functionality where we say instead of make we they always they copy the code or double click for nothing, we feel say okay, whenever we double click this our result for here, make it copy them into a clipboard. So like to challenge yourself to try to add more features on anything where I build, and if you get the code for GitHub, maybe I show the community for our Telegram, say, oh, now here on my code be this one, now everything I do be this. If you set up somewhere where if you see the code, or if you do for code pen or all these things. And I would like to be that you build for on our own project. So, but for now, that's all we need to learn. I will see you now for the next video. Thank you.